Welcome back to coverage of Grand Prix Detroit. Kenji Igashira in the booth with Jacob Van Lunen. As you can see on both sides, the teams are ready and gaming. We're going to go down to Owen Turtenwald versus Tom Martell here. Both players leading on planes.
Tom Martell, of course, a Pro Tour champion, playing against Owen Turtenwald, who has been one of the better Magic players for the last half decade or so.
Now both of these players look like they're on black-white decks, which tend to be more of the enchantment-y, synergistic decks.
Especially when you're playing a tournament like Team Sealed, where you really get to see what you're working with before you have to build your deck. So once you see that you have the critical mass of enchantments that you'll need, then building a deck like this can become pretty exciting.
Yeah. And right on cue, we have two creatures that do get pumped up by enchantment effects. Blessed Spirit for Owen Turtenwald and Bloodcurse Knight for Tom Martell. But Owen had that turn 2 token Freeblade that we always look out for.
This is a great start for Owen. Suppression Bonds not only turning off that potentially life-linking creature on Tom Martell's side of the table, but also pumping up his Blessed Spirits and allowing his token Freeblade to get in there and get that Renown trigger.
And this is exactly what you want to do, that 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop removal spell, just beating down Tom Martell already at 12 life. All he can do on turn 4 is play a token Freeblade.
Yeah, and he missed his 4th land drop also, and it looks like Owen actually has a Blightcaster in hand, which could just gobble up that token Freeblade absolutely for free here. It's going to be pretty hard for Tom to have a good attack with that token Freeblade with the 3/3 Vigilance and the 2/3 Blightcaster on the other side of the table for Owen.
This just goes to show how quickly this format can, end, or I guess how quickly the games can go. Tom did look like he drew a 4th land there, luckily. Caves of Quellos, that's on color for him.
Yeah, that's a nice one to pick up. One of the things that a lot of people undervalue when they're playing Limited is mana fixing. And you know from Constructed that the multicolored lands are so important to assuring victory because so many games are lost simply by missing the required colors that you need to cast your spells. So picking up one of those lands is a very nice thing to do, especially in a Team Seal format like this.
Unfortunately for him, he has to pay a life off of the caves to play that War Oracle. It does have lifelink, but wow. Owen with Grasp of the Hieromancer targeting his Blightcaster, triggering the -2/2. And that's all.
Yeah, the -2/2 would kill the token Freeblade, and then the trigger from Grasp of the Hieromancer when he attacked would actually tap down the War Oracle. So essentially clearing Tom Martell's board all for 2 mana there. Pretty exciting play.
Very quick game. So Owen Turtenwald up a game on Tom Martell. We're heading down to Reed Duke versus Paul Cheon. We see a Reeve Soul from Duke taking out the Freakus Disciple. And yeah, it looks like Reed's on the beatdown plan here as well. Both Owen and Reed,
Yeah, a whole team of elves here, rolling 3 deep, coming in at Paul Cheon's face, and
looks like Paul has a nice little stabilization. Separatist Void Mage bouncing the Shaman there.
That's a pretty nice one, and also the fact that Reed Duke only has 1 swamp means it's going to be very hard for him to double spell alongside that Shaman.
Good point, but Reed Duke we see playing that Rock Smaller into the Shaman.
And because he was able to cast a green spell and a black spell that turn, he was still able to use his mana as efficiently as possible.
We'll have to see what Paul can pull out here. Again, with the double Leaf Gilder, Reed's just been able to dump out his hand very, very quickly. Rock Smaller is probably going to be a very large issue for him. Even a thing like Wild Instincts would just be a 2-for-1. I'm thinking he needs to have a Disperse or an Anchor to the Ether in addition to something else.
Yeah, Claustrophobia would be fine right now, but then he's still going to take a lot of damage on the following turn. His life total is still padded enough where it's not the end of the world, but...
It looks like he is going to Wild Instincts, but this time it's going to be on the Shaman instead. Paul having to discard an island from the Shamans.
And I like this play a lot from Paul. I mean, you don't really necessarily need to trade your Separatist Void Mage away for just a Leaf Gilder. Offering the trade there, you know that the Rock Smallers isn't going to go ahead and trade with that Void Mage, so just take 8 to the face, continue applying pressure on your opponent, set yourself up for a strong racing situation in the following turn.
Unfortunately for Paul, he only has 1 creature. Reed has 3. The Leaf Gilders, great early game for that ramp, but now late game, he doesn't need the mana. He can just start attacking in with them. Timberpack Wolf, the follow-up play.
And I would like a follow-through attack here for Paul. I guess it largely depends on what's in his hand, but I think squeaking through those points of damage, it can be pretty important, especially in a situation like this. You're not really. I mean, I guess you're going to trade the wolf for a leaf gilder anyway, but he obviously has an answer to the rocks maulers in hand that's going to cost 3 or less mana. If he doesn't, then he finds himself in a really awkward spot. So he's just going to attempt to trade with both leaf gilders here. Maybe he has a disperse for the maulers. I think that's about all I can see him having in this spot.
I think that's a really good point you make, though, attacking with the Separatist Void Mage. A lot of people, when they're in this type of a position, they play too cautiously. They don't go for the kill. They just sit back and play not to lose.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Paul not making that attack leads me to believe that he has a good follow-up play, and he's just waiting to maybe draw a 6th land. So perhaps, or maybe even just waiting to. No, I get. So he discarded the land off Wild Instincts.
After the Shaman died,
it seems unlikely that he has something like Sky Snare Spider in hand, actually. I think he's just looking to block here. He's hoping that the top of his deck treats him well.
Read with the Sword of the Animist. How do you like that card? I've seen a lot of people playing that today.
I love that card. I think it's a very high quality rare. I think that card is going to have tons of constructed applications in the very near future. It's just the fact that, those lands represent cards, especially in constructed where you can design your deck to fully utilize them. So, you could use that card alongside something like Mastery of the Unseen and just completely take over the game. I think Sword of the Animist has a lot of potential in the very near future.
You think the 2 mana to equip is not too high?
I mean, when you're attacking with it, you're drawing a card, essentially, and you're putting yourself ahead of turn. So I think that I definitely think it's worth it. And +1 is pretty huge in this format in general, so I definitely take Sword of the Animist very high. I have first pick for the card.
All right, looks like Reed's attacking in with all of his creatures here. The sword triggering him finding his 2nd swamp. And that's important to note, too, because cards like Unholy Hunger, Eye Blight Massacre all require double black. So Paul luckily does have the Disperse on the Rocks Maulers, and that's actually really big here that Reed played the sword and equipped it first, because now he's not really able to play the Mauler out. All right, equip on the tapped Leaf Gilder. Paul at 5 life. This is his move here. This is the turn that he needs to do something to stabilize. More so because he knows that the Maulers is in hand.
That's pretty good.
Double Instincts. Gets in for 4. And now he's the only one with a creature on the board.
The Rocks Mauler is going to come down and immediately become a 5/5 by picking up the sword. Or,
follow-up Shaman number 2.
I really like Deadbird Shaman in this format, too. The fact that it kills so many of the renowned creatures, even after they become renowned, it really helps you catch up a lot and forces the issue on your opponent where they're often going to want to stop attacking until they can empty out their hands so the Shaman doesn't have as much of an effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that buys you a lot of time.
Paul with a nice follow-up. Another Freaka's Disciple, which can actually trade away with the Mauler, even though he'll still take a few points of trample damage, especially if the sword is equipped. Shaman, not too much of an issue here, although I like attacking with Shaman just because Paul only has 1 card left in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, it really puts Paul in an awkward spot because he kind of needs to trade off against both because the trample damage on the Rocks Maulers, he's still going to take 2 from that. So that means he has to block that Deadbird Shaman or he just dies.
Exactly.
So now he's going to lose that last card in his hand. And because he's stuck on 5 land, I think that that card has been in his hand for a little while. That may be a powerful 6-drop, something like Sky Snare Spider or who knows. Ooh, and this is just going to be it anyway. Yep. Oh, it's just a farce. So... yeah, what's cool about that play there is that Unholy Hunger, as an instant, was able to take out what was blocking the Rocks Maulers, and then because it has Trample, now it deals the full 5 points to Paul.
Yep.
And his life total's 5, so that's it.
So it looks like Owen Turnwald and Reed Duke both up a game, but Alexander Hayne took his first game versus William Huey Jensen. We're going back to the match between Owen Turnwald and Tom Martell. Tom this time with a much better start, it looks like, against Owen's enchantment-themed black-white deck. You see War Oracle, already renowned, with, speaking of which, Sword of the Animist, and a Stalwart Aven for Tom.
Yeah, and it is very difficult to beat Sword of the Animist, especially in a long game.
Just the filtering out your deck of lands, drawing more spells. I think Tom Martell drew a Blight Test of his own.
Play a ton of spells every single turn.
Sure.
Very little punishment for doing so.
This looks like it's going to probably be more of a grindier matchup, although the War Oracle is a 5/5 and can attack past the Totem Guide Heartbeast.
And one of my favorite strategies in most limited formats is build a Baneslayer, and Tom Martell is doing a pretty good job of it here.
Even gets to find more lands. You know, I've been really impressed by Stalwart Aven. I think it's one of the best white common. In my opinion, that's the best white common. What do you think?
I mean, I like Tobin Freeblade better, but I do love Stalwart Aven. I think it is a very premium common. I would take it over commons that I actually deem to be better cards in other colors, simply because I prefer being white. I think on my commons list of what cards I would take, it might actually just be second for me in the set because of how highly I want to be white, because of how strongly I want to be white.
Sure,
rather.
sure.
Ooh, Copperfed.
So it looks like Tom has some nice ones in his deck, just didn't get there last time. This is going to make it very, very hard for Owen to come back unless he has an instant removal spell here, maybe like an Unholy Hunger or Cruel Revival.
And even then, he's going to be facing down
Yeah.
a 5/5 lifelinker and a 2/4 flying.
The nice thing, I guess, for Tom Martell is that even if Suspension Bonds hits the Kokoped, you know, the triggered ability is still going to go off whenever that occurs. All right, looks like a lot of options, I guess, for Owen.
And this is interesting because it looks like he will be able to play 2 enchantments this turn because of the Infernal Scarring also. So he could actually put himself in a situation here where he kills the Stalwart Aven just with Blightcaster triggers, while also using Suppression Bonds to lock down the Kothafed. And then the Infernal Scarring will make his creatures big enough that he could double trade off of that War Oracle if he needs to. And then he's got a lot more cards in his hand than Tom Martell. So this could be a big turn for him. So now we're going to see Infernal Scarring.
Wow,
Yep.
Great point.
And now he has the option to double block here. And I mean, Tom could still have any number of things in hand. It seems like he hasn't even had an opportunity to do much else. But
just like that, the game seems to reach some sort of parity again. Blightcaster definitely doing a lot of work there. Is Infernal Scarring a card that you would run without Blightcasters? Is that something?
I don't love it. I think there are definitely cards you would like to play alongside. Like it works well in enchantment-themed black-white decks, and it also works well in very aggressive decks. I think that for example, if you're playing a black-red deck and you have a lot of First Strike, if you have a ton of Crone Sergeants, then a card like Infernal Scarring becomes very strong because it, kind of breaks even on cards when you're running out, and just applying pressure with a quick First Strike creature with a lot of power often is enough to win the game by itself.
All right. Well, Owen made the play that you had suggested, double blocking the War Oracle. Unfortunately for him, Tom Martell had an Unholy Hunger to take care of the Blightcaster before damage was dealt. Oracle is going to eat the Totem Guide Heartbeast. Tom comforting his life total by 5 points.
And Copfed just
chilling over there, drawing cards.
Drawing tons and tons of cards, while Tom is at a healthy 29.
Right. Weight of the Underworld is the first play for Owen on the War Oracle. From a 5/5, it's now going to be a 2/3, which Aven can block.
This seems like a fine play there.
Sure, absolutely. I do think I saw a Blightcaster on Tom Martell's hand. I'm not sure if he had any enchantments to go along with that, but we will definitely see.
Yeah, even if he has one, it's good enough to finish off this Aven because he can cast the Blightcaster after he attacks with the War Oracle, and we can be pretty sure that when he attacks with that War Oracle that Owen's just going to block with the Aven, assuming it's a free block.
Oh, yeah. All right, Blightcaster going to come down pre-combat.
Interesting.
So Weight of the Underworld is just going to take it out immediately so that he's going to get into the full 2 points of damage. Tom drawing a card. Paying 1 life, of course.
And a card like Sword of the Animus works really well in these Blightcaster decks. One of the issues with playing a Blightcaster strategy is even when your deck comes together, oftentimes by the time you set up that engine and you really have those cogs all in place, you're just dead to the more aggressive strategies. So when you're using a card like Sword of the Animus and you have those cheaper creatures, it really lets you, have the lands that you need to do things like cast Blightcaster and Weight of the Underworld in the same turn. And you need to be able to make plays like that if you want to win long games with this deck.
Yeah. We can see on the scoreboard up the top there, William Huey Jensen takes the second game versus Alexander Hayne. So we're going to go to a game 3 down there. Paul Cheon and Reed Duke still on game 2. Reed up a game. Remember, this game is very important. This match, this series is very important for both teams.
Yeah, this is a win and in for the top 8 of the tournament. It's interesting, if matches in the field actually play out in a very specific way, then these players could actually shake hands, draw, and both find themselves in the top 4 of the tournament.
Because some of these teams have already played against each other, and so they can't be paired again, and so we have a little bit of odd pairings. We'll have to see how that plays out. Look how many lands Tom Martell has.
Yeah, aren't many left in his deck.
His deck is chock full of spells. And I think the raw card advantage that Tom Martell has gotten this game is just going to push him over the top here.
Yeah, with Kathafed and that sort of the Animus going for just so long, it's going to be extremely difficult for Owen to find a way out here.
Consul's Lieutenant, definitely a great 2-drop. Not in this situation.
Yeah, right now it's a little bit late to the party. I think this is an Auramancer that's going to come down from Owen here. And I'm not sure what he's going to get back. I guess Infernal Scarring would be fine, but not wonderful.
Is that his only target in the graveyard?
Yeah, I believe that is the only target because the Weight of the Underworld's still on the board.
Sure. Looks like he's going to have to do that. Any value is good value. All right, he's at least feigning an Unholy Hunger here. Tom Martell sees that he's getting back the Infernal Scarring. Owen opting not to cast it. Maybe bluffing a little bit, seeing if he can buy an extra turn or 2.
He also does have multiple copies of Blightcaster in his hand, and right now the Infernal Scarring doesn't really affect what attacks Tom Martell will be making. Although I guess putting it on the first striker prevents Tom from continuing to get in there with the Blightcaster just for free.
Brutal draw from Tom Martell. Draws another copy of Weight of the Underworld.
Oh my goodness gracious. And that's going to be kind of a blowout here.
Yeah. Blightcaster triggering, killing the Auramancer, drawing Tom Martell a card, Weight of the Underworld, resolving, killing the Consul's Lieutenant, drawing him another card.
And he's just running away with this one.
Yeah. With that padded life total from the War Oracle. Sort of the Animist moving over, making all of his creatures at least 2 power, and that's going to be game number 2 between Owen Turtenwald and Tom Martell. So they'll be going to game 3. Here you are with an overlook of all the players here at Grand Prix Detroit in your feature match area.
Yeah, going over to watch Paul Cheon and Reed Duke here in the thick of their second game. Looks like Reed has once again put himself in a pretty good position here, though I'm not sure if these life totals are perfect yet, but seems like that Water Courser is applying a lot of pressure.
With that Stratus Walk, yeah, and Reed doesn't have any way to deal with flyers currently.
Yeah, even if he does have a card like Unholy Hunger in his hand, he's going to need a second black mana before he can use that.
And if we look at the graveyards, we see that Timberpack Wolf ate a Reeve Soul. That would have been Paul's second on the battlefield, so I think after the coast was clear, the Water Courser probably got suited up by the Stratus Walk.
Water Courser a nice card to suit up with Stratus Walk. I mean, it can attack for so much damage so quickly.
Problem for Paul being he only has 1 island at the moment. But Reed doesn't have any threatening creatures. They're all 2/2s or weaker.
And I think if you're Paul, do you just trade here? Trade?
Yeah, I think so. I think you just keep beating in with the Water Courser. We know Paul has double Wild Instincts in his deck, though, from the previous game. So he might be a little bit reluctant to trade away all but one of his creatures. Any removal from Reed is going to make it so those Wild Instincts are kind of dead cards, if that's the case.
It's just going to take 2 here, not that big of a deal.
Ooh, Conclave Naturalists. Now, we've talked about this card many times. Takes out the Stratus Walk.
Yeah, I mean, every time I play with that card, it's just an all-star. You were talking before about people splashing for it. I don't regard that as a mistake at all. I mean, it's a really, really, really good card. Definitely one of the better uncommons in this set.
Yeah.
Lots of good uncommons in Magic Origins for limited.
Paul seems to have drawn his second island for the turn. Regarding his plays. Again, both the other matches, Owen versus Tom, they're on game 3. William Huey Jensen versus Alexander Hayne, they're on game 3. So this could be a very, very important game. If Reed takes this, then Owen or Huey only need to win, you know, one of their game 3s.
It puts Alexander Hayne and Tom Martell's back against the wall. And we know that Tom Martell is going to be on the draw this game.
All right, second island for Paul. Doing a little on-table math. I think he has a Separatist Void Mage in his hand.
Interesting. Yeah. Does he have any of his Wild Instincts, perhaps, also?
Potentially. Wild Instincts on the courser to the Conclave Naturalists is definitely not terrible. All right, he's just going to bounce the Conclave Naturalists. He doesn't have any artifacts or enchantments, so not too much of a problem. He just wants to get rid of the 4/4, it seems.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mind to attack with Water Courser here. Oh, attack with both. I like that, too.
Sure. Reed has to double block the Water Courser minimum if he wants to deal with it.
Yeah, and I mean, this cleans up the board quite nicely. Both players are just going to be left with dueling 2/2s. Paul has an advantage in terms of life total, but the fact that Reed Duke has a card like Foundry of the Councils on the board means that he does have slightly more longevity. This is still anybody's game, though.
Yeah, for sure. And again, the Rock Maulers sort of been the bane of Paul's tournament, this match at least. Another Separatist Void Mage in Paul Chion's hand. All right, he has the tempo. Unfortunately, he does not have the board position anymore to really utilize that.
Yeah, and notice Reed actually leaving back his elite, assuming that the Maulers is not long of this world. And Reed would definitely like to trade off his Dwynen's elite for that Separatist Void Mage at this point.
I think so. He knows he has a lot more powerful cards in his deck that he wants to get to. And again, I think it's pretty telling that, he played that Foundry on turn 5, which probably told Paul that he didn't have another land. A lot of times people sandbag the Foundry until they can use it. And so he's just going to play out his Freaka's Disciple. We know he has at least one more in the deck somewhere. Remember, he does have double Wild Instincts as well, so if he can chain the Disciple into Wild Instincts, he might be able to pull off something nice. And number 6 for Reed here. He just replays his Conclave Naturalists.
Yeah, it is a 4/4.
Paul draws for the turn. Do you like attacking with the Disciple here? So you say you don't have any tricks. Is it risky to try and start racing?
I think you're ahead in the race. I think an attack might just be as good as leaving it on defense. I think you're right.
I don't know. It's like I think Reed probably just snap blocks with the Conclave Naturalists is the only thing.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're okay with that, then it's a fine attack. And I think Paul's probably okay with that. It is largely dependent on his hand, though.
Sure. We do know that Paul has that second Separatist Void Mage, so maybe bouncing the Conclave Naturalists, attacking with the Disciple. He's going to bounce the Mauler. Okay. And that also makes a lot of sense. He doesn't want to get hit back and then have a 6/6 Renowned Trampler in his way.
And here he has some decisions to make, because by sending both, I mean, you're just cleaning up the board. You're left with a 2/2, but you know for a fact that your opponent's at least going to play a 4/4 on the following turn. So you're not really applying any sort of real pressure. So if you're hoping to go wide in any way, or if you're trying to play to a big card like Jiraga Invocation, then it's going to be pretty hard to... oh, well, that helps.
Yeah, Yeva's Force Mage targeting the Separatist Void Mage. Attacking in with now a 4/4 and a 2/3 Death Touch. What kind of blocks do you make here as Reed?
I think I trade my Naturalist for the Disciple. And I think that's the only block I make.
Yeah, and at this point, you're at 7 life, so you do have to block something at the very least.
Yeah, right now, Chion's coming in for 6, but going down to 1 doesn't seem like the best of plays. Going down to 3 is kind of fine because the majority of the creatures on the other side of the table have 2 power, so you can still afford to leave 1, let 1 get through.
Sorry, I guess you're right. It wasn't force blocks necessarily to say, but he just had so many creatures on the battlefield. Looks like the Freakish Disciple is going to get renowned. Get in for 2.
Yeah, so he chooses to go ahead and block the Separatist Void Mage there with the 4/4. Conclave Naturalist, and of course Separatist Void Mage is also a 4/4 because of the Force Mage. And yeah, that means those are going to trade off.
Time and time again, we see these blue-green decks utilizing that tempo to stay ahead in the game. We know Reed has a bunch of cards in his hand, one of them being the Rock Smaller. He does have the mana to activate the Foundry as well. I think Paul is hellbent. He has no cards in hand. So living off the top. All right, Maulers comes down again. Reed just has to pass the turn once more. Let's see if Paul can find something this turn other than a land. Shadow Sneak peeks at it.
Yeah. What is this card?
And I assume you have to be favoring Paul's position here. That Freakish Disciple is just doing a ton of work.
Yeah, I mean, it's very close. I think they're about even right now. It's largely dependent on who has a better card in their hand at this point. And Reed, remember, only has 1 black mana in play, and we know for a fact that he has multiple copies of Unholy Hunger.
Yes.
So the moment he draws that Unholy Hunger, it sets him up for some really nice 2-for-1 action by attacking with the Trampling Rock Smaller.
And even if he doesn't draw anything to do next turn, again, the Foundry is still active if need be. None of Paul's creatures currently have trample. Looks like Paul's just going to pass the turn here. I see the hand motion, getting ready. Oh, wait, I lied. It's an attack.
And I like this attack because, you know, it's better than a block on the Mauler.
Yeah. I think a lot of people say that the Disciple and the Rock Smaulers are pretty comparable as far as green commons are concerned. Wild Instinct's maybe a little bit better than both of those. All right, Visionary's not a bad draw for Reed. It's going to give him at least a chump blocker, if nothing else, and a draw step, which he finds a swamp with. Ooh, Dwynen now. The follow-up play for Reed. Now, what is Dwynen doing on this board?
All right, so Dwynen is making that Elvish Visionary into a 2/2. It's making the Dwynen's Elite into a 3/3. And it's also giving him a ton of life gain capacity, depending on how he chooses to attack here in the coming turns.
Yeah, remember, Dwynen, whenever it attacks, you gain 1 life for each attacking elf, not other elves. So if Dwynen attacks by itself, he's going to gain at least 1 life. Although Rock Smaulers off the top for Paul Cheon. A very good draw.
Yeah, both of them. I mean, the top of the libraries will decide this game.
Looks like the other matches are still going on their game 3. Owen versus Tom and William Jensen versus Alexander Hain.
Owen does very well with black-green decks, both in limited and in constructed. When you see him playing team events, he is often on the grindy black deck with, he loves Gravedigger effects.
Sure.
A card like Llanowar Empath is right up his alley.
Oof. Is this a Guilt Leaf Winnower from Reed?
Well, I believe it is.
Unfortunately, it doesn't have any targets. Of course, when it enters the battlefield, you destroy a creature. You know, power and toughness are not the same. Paul luckily having all creatures that do have same power and toughness. And that Sword of the Animist we love so much. The nice thing is, the Winnower has Menace. Do you think Reed starts getting aggressive here?
It's difficult to say. I mean, he's at 5. He still has all this stuff coming in from the other end. He doesn't want to just find himself dead to a card like Titanic Growth or Might of the Masses. And he really can afford to play a longer game. Once he gets those Foundry of the Council tokens, he'd be happy to suit those up with the Sword of the Animus, and I think that's the play we're going to end up seeing.
Update, it looks like Alexander Hain takes game 3 versus William Huey Jensen. I think we're going to switch over to game A between Owen Turtenwald and Tom Martell. They are on game 3, and it seems like it might be coming close to an end here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a deciding game for the match
Yes.
if Tom Martell is able to win. So very important here.
It looks like a lot of things have already hit the graveyard. Unholy Hunger, Celestial Flare on Tom Martell's side. Double Blightcaster in the graveyard for Owen Turnwald. But the board seems pretty safe for both teams. Now, if we get life totals correct here, it looks like Owen's at 20 and Tom's at 5.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. So looks like Owen was able to whittle Tom down very, very quickly with Blightcaster, Grasp of the Hieromancer, and looks like double Topin Freeblade, both renowned. Oh, Cruel Revival on the Stalwart Aven. And Owen's going to ship both of his creatures. This would put Tom at 1 life.
Tom in a very rough spot here. Going to be hard to chump at all. Going down to 1.
Won't be surprised if he's banking on drawing an enchantment of some sort. Maybe Weight of the Underworld or something.
I believe he does have an Auramancer. So depending on what's in his graveyard, does he have anything?
It doesn't look like it.
Does not seem that he does.
That land for the turn. Is going to play out that Auramancer. Nothing to target. Just has to say go. And I think we're probably going to see an attack by Owen.
Yeah, and that will be a victory in the column for Owen Turnwald. Then we can jump back over afterward and watch the rest of Reed Duke versus Paul Sheehan, the deciding match.
Infernal Scarring on the Topin Freeblade. Now, do you think he's going to attack with both here? Almost certainly, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, play around that Celestial Flare. Double block on the Topin. Oh, but Tom has the Cruel Revival.
He does.
Wow, does he have no zombie in the graveyard, but a double block. We're going to see Owen draw a card off of the Infernal. He has 2 swamps in his hand.
Wow, so both players, no cards left.
Yeah.
Tom gets first lick with his top deck. It's a Fetid Imp.
That's very good at blocking.
Yep, he is at 1, so this is close. Oh, and another land off the top.
All right, we might have a game yet, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Hold on to your seats, because remember, if Tom wins this game, well, that's the
Match
match.
ends.
That's
Yeah.
the match.
Tom does not want to lose to a haste creature or something that has flash. Really got to dig into the tank here, decide what kind of cards could I possibly lose to. Hix's Prison Warden jumps out to me as a white creature that has flash that can end the game out of the blue, but that's about it.
I think that's the only thing, right?
Yeah, so I think that you really have to attack, because if your opponent has Hix's Prison Warden and you're at 1 with no cards left in your hand, then you're in a pretty rough way anyway.
Truth be told, if Owen had an enchantment removal spell for the Suppression Bonds on his Topin Freeblade, that would also work.
Absolutely, and that's an important thing to think about, actually. An Enlightened Ascetic off the top here, which would definitely be a card that Owen would sideboard in. Ooh,
wow.
That's about the best draw step possible here for Owen.
I would imagine that's probably one of the cards he was looking for. Read the Bones when he's at 18 life.
Wow.
So, if I saw this cards correctly, Sigil of the Empty Throne, Fleshbag Marauder.
Yeah, so I think you have to keep the Sigil. You probably keep the Marauder. You just play
both.
Sigil here, right? Or do you just play Marauder?
Well, so he drew a Suppression Bonds the turn prior. So he already can make a 4/4.
Oh, yeah, Marauder's just a clean play because he has the bonded Topin Freeblade.
So even though Tom has a War Oracle off the top, Owen has enough mana to play the Sigil, play the land,
Suppression Bonds, and there's a free Angel.
get a 4/4 flyer.
Yep.
Tom knows he has nothing in his deck. Wow. And so we are actually going to go back down to Reed and Paul. We're tied up 1-1 right now, and man, this board got a lot more cluttered.
Yeah, this is still the same game.
Yeah, remember, Reed Duke is up a game on Paul Cheon. Both of these teams are 11-2, fighting for that top 4 berth. Looks like Paul has another huge flyer now, this time in the form of Rock Smaller.
Yeah, and Parathopters.
And remember, Dwynen has reach.
Yeah.
So Dwynen going to trade away for the Rock Smaller here. And a Mana Gorger Hydra for Paul. I bet he wishes he had that a little bit earlier in the game, but definitely could still be a thing. Reed with a lot of lands, probably thanks to that Sword of the Animist we see equipped to the Elvish Visionary. But I think this is still a very, very top deck battle.
Yeah. And I mean, we're seeing here the sword, how valuable that +1/+1 is in this format. Even cards like Veteran Sidearm end up doing a lot of work here when you're playing Magic Origins Limited, because so many of the creatures are just 2/2s. So suddenly cards like Elvish Visionary are able to trade up, while your 2/2s are able to attack into other 2/2s. You really force opponents into double blocking situations, and the format has enough instant speed removal where that lends people to getting 2-for-1, and you win a lot of free matches that way.
Yeah, excellent point. Life totals are pretty narrow. I mean, Reed at 5, Paul on 10. Reed does have the larger board currently. Looks like he's making some sort of attack. I think he definitely wants to attack while the Hydra is still small.
Paul is not looking safe here either. I mean, he's at just 10.
All right, double flyer and Elvish Visionary entering the red zone. Sword of the Animist doing its thing, getting an extra land for Reed, whose deck is looking mighty, mighty thin.
Yeah, at this point now he has 11 lands in play.
And he's much more likely to draw spells than if he was, say, on 6 or 7 like Paul is.
And that's pretty nice too, when you get to trade your Elvish Visionary off for a real card.
Visionary trading for the Separatist Void Mage there. Paul falling to 8 off the Thopters. Sword re-equipping to the Dwynen's Elite. Oh, post-combat Rock Mauler from Reed, who drew that this turn. That's a nasty one. Let's see if Paul can find something.
There are things that Paul could use to get out of the woods here.
5 mana, looks good. A Rock Mauler of his own, how about?
Yeah. Think he'll take it.
Problem, of course, being that the Thopters, especially with the sword, are still proving to be quite problematic.
Yeah, I mean, those are going to keep on attacking, and Reed is going to continually thin his deck, put more lands into play, and that sword alongside those 2 Thopters, that's a 3-turn clock.
Yes.
And the window closes on Paul Cheon to have an opportunity to slow that clock by a full turn just after 2 attacks. So Paul, 1 draw step to find himself with a way to survive, and then from there he needs to find a way to win.
Yeah, looking just at the graveyards of this game has progressed on for quite some time. You have to be a little bit scared if you're Reed. Paul has 2 trampling creatures. One of them can get a lot larger still.
Yeah, just a card like Might of the Masks, a card like Titanic Growth could end this game completely out of nowhere.
Yeah. Again, Reed being at 5 life. Very, very critical that he plays in a manner that's going to let him still make the attacks he needs to put the pressure on Paul, but still not die to the trampling creatures on the other side. All right, sword equipped to Rock Mauler, and it's just the Mauler coming in this time.
Yeah, I like this play. I mean, leaving back pretty much everything else. Pads your life total a bunch. The problem is that both of those creatures on Paul Cheon's side of the table both have trample. So here Reed probably has an instant speed removal spell, or just something with a really, really big back end.
I think Reed just making this attack because it forces Paul to trade away with either his Rock Mauler or his Mana Gorger, right? Because it's going to be a forced double block here. Since Reed's a 5/5, I wouldn't be surprised if Paul just double blocks with his Mauler and you have his Force Mage.
He could just take it with the intention of attempting to win on the following turn, though, with a specific top deck.
Sure. Okay, so we count. Reed has how much toughness left back? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Paul has 7 trample currently. Yeah, he would need another spell, pump spell of some sort.
And any pump spell would really work from this point, so Stratus Walk into another spell.
Okay,
sure. Pretty good.
Sure. Oh, we get an overview of the players. This is one of the nice things about Team Sealed. Get to get input from some of the other players on your team. Maybe you might have missed something. Reed taking a gander over at the clock, it looked like. It's a great shot, by the way.
That was an absolutely amazing shot, just watching those guys talk to one another. Owen's like, oh, wait, no, I got it. And then Huey's like, no, it doesn't work. We already know that he doesn't have this based on this and this and this. And then Owen's like, oh, okay, I got it. And Reed's like, just come on, guys. Need some help over here. This is complicated.
I want to hear more of your voices for these players. It's excellent.
They're just like voices chosen at random. One of them's like Timon from
yeah. Looks like Paul's taking the hit from the Rock Smaller. We see the
and I like that a lot.
Getting its
Paul.
renown triggers. Wow. Okay. I assume post-combat we're going to see the sword move. And maybe a pass. All right, let's see if Paul knocks the top of his deck.
Yep.
One-time
Here
dealer.
goes nothing.
Takes a look. Forest, I see, and something else. It does look like a spell.
It's a spell.
It's a spell, ladies and gentlemen.
Start.
Ooh. All right.
Elvish Visionary. Spin that wheel again.
And getting a counter. He shuffled a little bit too quickly there. I didn't really catch it.
Oh, am I going to sweat it out? I like it.
Yeah. Just wanted to jam Rogue's Passage, but not, only be able to deal 4 or something.
Yeah.
Visionary is probably one of the better draws he could have had, right?
Yeah, Visionary is a good lead-in. It helps you find another card. So, I mean, now he gets to swing with everybody?
Oh, he's pre-combat. It might be a Wild Instincts. Oh, Claustrophobia.
I think that's it. That's it.
Let's count.
Right? So, then there's 4 toughness on the other side of the table, and yep.
Wow. And since Reed can only block 4 of the trampling damage.
Yeah, even if he puts Thopter on a 2/2, then blocks with the other 2 on a trample guy, he dies.
Yep.
Wow.
All right, Thopter can block 2 damage, that's right, if he blocks the Force Mage.
Yep.
Oh, but Reed's last card in hand happened to be Unholy Hunger.
And he has that just abundance of lands to be able to cast that thanks to
moly.
Sword of the Animus. It's just an incredible, incredible match there.
Just like that, we see a little fist pump from Owen. Owen 2-1ing over Tom Martell. Willem Huey Jensen losing 1-2 to Alexander Hayne. And now Reed Duke with a 2-0 over Paul Cheon. That's going to put them to 12-2, Jacob.
Yeah, that's a pretty big win for them. And this is a powerhouse matchup right here. Alexander Hayne flew to Japan earlier this year to play in a Team GP and then won the whole thing. On the other side of the table, Peach Garden Oath now going to another top 4. Peach Garden Oath has just been demolishing these team events. I think they won their very first one. Anyway, let's head back to the booth right now.